India's Digital Personal Data Protection Act is now active. The law codifies the rights of data principals, the citizens, while outlining strict legal responsibilities for the data fiduciaries collecting their information. Every second, a continuous flow of unverified personal data surges from individual devices into opaque corporate processing centers. As the National Data Protection Board takes shape, the immediate corporate reaction is a hiring surge. Companies are aggressively staffing internal data protection officers to build out their compliance infrastructures. Relying solely on internal officers creates an immediate structural flaw. An organization writing its own rules and then policing its own adherence to them operates in a closed loop of self-policing. To break that loop, the law requires a secondary mechanism, the Independent Data Auditor, or IDA. This network map outlines the DPDPA ecosystem. Data principals generate data, data fiduciaries process it, and the Data Protection Board provides oversight. Compliance demands an internal DPO line, parallel to an external IDA audit line. FDPPI and ADAI are building this verification layer. Every major entity will need this external oversight. The scale of this new profession will match the demand for internal DPOs, requiring a massive parallel professional infrastructure. The Independent Data Auditor is not an optional consultant. They are a mandatory extension of the Data Protection Board's regulatory power, installed specifically to shatter corporate closed loops. To understand how this works in practice, we need to define the operational boundaries of the Internal Data Protection Officer. The DPO has a specific mandate: designing, deploying, and maintaining the internal compliance mechanisms that meet the DPDPA standards. This diagram places the DPO exactly where they operate, firmly inside the company's defensive perimeter, integrated deeply with internal corporate data streams. This positioning carries an inherent limitation. The DPO is ultimately employed by, and answers directly to, the exact entity they are tasked with regulating. By contrast, the Independent Data Auditor operates completely outside that corporate hierarchy. They have no networked dependencies or internal financial reliance on the target company. The auditor's reporting structure deliberately bypasses the company's executive team. Their findings route directly to the Data Protection Board. Entities legally classified as significant data fiduciaries must maintain both positions simultaneously. To ensure standardized verification across the market, AIDAI categorizes these external auditors into accredited, certified, and probationary tiers. Accountability under the DPDPA requires this adversarial, bifurcated structure. Without the friction generated by an external auditor, internal compliance quickly devolves into a paperwork exercise. Structuring an auditor outside the company is the first step, but a third-party contract alone does not guarantee true independence in the face of heavy corporate pushback. Deep technical and legal knowledge qualifies a professional to act as a DPO. For an IDA, technical proficiency is the baseline, but it is insufficient on its own. Effective auditing requires a psychological component that industry veterans refer to as inner engineering. This inner engineering is an internalized ethical framework. It is a rigid, individual sense of responsibility, directly tied to the primary objectives of the law. This visual represents that framework in action. External forces, financial incentives, corporate timelines, executive friction, will attempt to distort the audit's findings. The auditor's ethics must remain completely rigid against that pressure. These internalized ethics act as an operational firewall, blocking conflicts of interest and neutralizing the pressure to dilute critical reports. Cultivating this ethical resistance is a primary focus for the FDPPI. They have designed targeted induction programs across India to train auditors to master legal procedure while developing the psychological autonomy required to challenge corporate interests. The functional goal is absolute clarity in reporting. IDAs must operate as the uncompromised eyes and ears of the Data Protection Board. Legal separation fails the moment an auditor bows to regulatory capture. True independence relies on a structural mindset as much as an external contract. Many standard data fiduciaries assume these intense auditing requirements will not apply to them. That assumption overlooks a critical technological catalyst. This graph charts a standard data fiduciary processing highly predictable data streams. Their volume and risk profile keep them safely below the regulatory threshold. The critical variable disrupting this stability is the integration of artificial intelligence processing models into a corporation's existing data architecture. AI models operate differently from standard software updates. They inherently absorb, process, and generate unquantifiable risks within the data pipeline, driving the variance well past the threshold. Absorbing these unquantifiable risks shifts the company into a high-stakes legal category, altering its operational and legal profile under the DPDPA. Under the law, this shift acts as a legal trigger. The absorption of AI-driven risk automatically reclassifies the entity from a standard fiduciary to a significant data fiduciary. The immediate legal consequence of this reclassification is strict. It triggers the absolute mandate to hire an independent data auditor. Artificial intelligence integration is rapidly becoming a universal business requirement. Consequently, the vast majority of major firms will inevitably cross this reclassification threshold. This technological shift guarantees a massive, sustained demand for certified IDAs across every sector of the Indian digital economy. AI adoption operates as a regulatory catalyst. The moment a company integrates these models, they legally bind themselves to the external IDA ecosystem. The fully realized DPDPA macro ecosystem places significant fiduciaries precisely in the middle, bracketed by internal DPOs enforcing compliance and external IDAs verifying it. Maintaining this structure requires defending it. There are concerted efforts by certain corporate sectors to dilute this strict implementation mechanism to avoid external oversight. This layout illustrates the conflict of interest present at the highest governmental levels. Entities like METI must juggle the opposing mandates of regulating the IT industry while simultaneously being tasked with driving its economic development. When the entities writing the rules also benefit from industry growth, independent audit organizations become absolutely critical to ensuring the law survives implementation. Organizations like the DPDPA and AIDI are operating at the forefront of this defense, shaping a professional revolution of auditors equipped to hold the line. The ultimate objective is protecting the Indian data principle. As the digital landscape grows increasingly opaque, citizen data requires rigorous, verifiable safeguarding. Corporate data protection relies on a mandated, structurally autonomous ecosystem, and that ecosystem is guarded entirely by the independent data auditor.